Ladies and gentlemen, dear EPP friends, dear delegates, a warm welcome from our side. And first of all, let me underline, all those delegates who are now in the Assembly Hall are the true heroes of this party Congress. Thanks for being here. And all to those delegates who are still outside, waiting to cast their vote, they can come back inside because we have some work to do now. We've got exactly 20 to 25 minutes time to get our resolutions done. So it's time to vote on our 5 ordinary resolutions and the 5 draft emergency resolutions that have been handed in. Please have the respective documents ready so we can proceed in an organized way. We will start with our ordinary resolutions. I will just briefly remind you all of the key topics which cover all papers. I understand you have read them all and you know exactly what we're talking about. So let's start with the first resolution. The draft ordinary resolution number 1 was tabled by the youth of the EPP and deals with the important topic of closing the VAT gap. Member states should move gradually to a fully digital tax system. Are there any requests for interventions? Yes, one. Mrs. Marcelo Gabrate from YEP. Where are you? Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. The youth of the European People's Party has presented a resolution aimed at closing the VAT gap. The VAT gap measures the effectiveness of VAT enforcement across Europe. And the revenue loss for every European citizen calculated nowadays is around 270 euros. Carousel fraud is something that regards every country in Europe and is the biggest tax evasion scheme that the world has ever faced. That is why the youth of EPP is proposing to close the VAT gap by further investing in tech-based tax collection. And it's not something that every country can do on its own. It's something that we have to do together because it regards every one of us. So I hope everyone here will support this. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Marcelo from the YEP. Are there further requests to speak? That is not the case. Then I would suggest that we now vote on the draft resolution number 1. Who's in favor? Who of you would like to vote against? Abstentions? And this has then been adopted. We come to the second draft ordinary resolution. This has also been tabled by YEP and deals with falling vaccination rates on our continent. Vaccinations currently prevent 2 to 3 million deaths a year worldwide. We would like to reach 95% vaccination rate in the EU for diseases for which a safe, inexpensive and effective childhood vaccine is available. The paper is also accusing the negative influence the social media campaigns have on vaccination. So, who would like to take the floor? We have one request to speak, Christina Balaska from YEP. The floor is yours.
So, thank you very much. We bring this resolution forward in order to address an issue that consists a major threat to public health for countries across our whole continent. The rise of anti-vaccine movements and the disinformation that has been possible, especially during the last years with the use of social media, has resulted to an alarming decrease of vaccination rates worldwide. Even 4 European countries are no longer declared measles-free. We believe that this issue needs to be addressed on a European level. Political commitment across every member state is fundamental, and we have to commit ourselves to achieving high immunization rates. And for this purpose, we also propose that a fact-based European-wide campaign is run in order to increase public awareness to the benefit of public health. I really hope that all of you welcome and support this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina, for your contribution. Further requests to speak? That is not the case. Then we can once again come to a vote. Who's in favor of this draft resolution? Please indicate. Who's against? Abstentions, and this has also been adopted. Our third draft ordinary resolution was tabled by the DPA from Albania and deals with the worrying situation in this country. We stand by the Democratic Party of Albania in its efforts to address the European aspirations of Albanian citizens. Reforms are definitely needed for the country to move forward on its path on EU integration. Who would like to take the floor? We have no requests to speak, so we can immediately move forward and vote. Who's in favor of this draft resolution? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. The fourth draft ordinary resolution was tabled by TS Lkd Lithuania and covers the following topics: the 10th anniversary of the Eastern Partnership, for which we reiterate our support; then a new flagship initiative, the so-called Trio Strategy 2030, that could deepen the integration between the EU and some of the EU-associated countries. We have two proposals as agreed upon today in the Resolution Committee. We would like to propose to add after the title the following wording: Eastern Partnership is a tailor-made concept of cooperation for all 6 countries: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine. Their further progress on the European path is very much dependent on compliance with European values and standards to which these countries have committed themselves. And then we also agreed in today's Resolution Committee meeting to add at the end of the resolution a further sentence, quote, "Further setbacks to democracy, reforms on the rule of law, and the erosion of a European orientation will jeopardize a Trio Strategy 2030 as described above," unquote. So these are our 2 additional amendments we would like to suggest. Who would like to take the floor? We have 2 requests to speak. First is from the Czech Republic, Mr. Karl Schwarzenberg. Karl Schwarzenberg, where are you? Okay, he's on his... he's coming from... Oh, you're on your way, yes? Herr Schwarzenberg.
Excuse me that I let you wait, because due to my health, I need some time to approach. The resolution as such is all right. Nothing against it. But there is no need for the Eastern nations of new institutions. There's need of concrete help. What I'm missing is there how lowering the trade barriers so each of these countries could really freely export into the European Union. And that is more important than new institutions. Second, the resolution speaks about the trio, which is wonderful, the countries who are more and more approaching democracy, and some became really democratic. But there are other Eastern neighborship countries too. Belarus. I know that the Russian dictator, Mr. Lukashenko, is not according to our taste, of course. But we have the most vivid interest that he keeps his halfway independence from Russia. So we have to support Belarus economically. Our wise predecessors in the 50s and 60s didn't cherish really the dictators Franco in Spain and Salazar in Portugal. But to prevent taking over of communism in this country, they supported them economically, so these economists developed accordingly quite well and saved those countries. So that's one thing. We have to keep good relations with Azerbaijan, which is one of the most important countries supporting us with gas and oil. And we speak about in Troya about Georgia. It's very nice with all the words of support for Georgia, but I realized that since the war ended, there was a creeping occupation, annexation of Georgia land, which was going on even after the end of the war. I never heard a voice of protest in Brussels or of our country. Please keep this in mind, that there was a progress of Russian occupation in Georgia. And one of the states of the European membership is Armenia. We must understand Armenia. If you have neighbors, Turkey and Azerbaijan, the only ally possible is Russia. And so that explains to us many of Armenian politics. But this country needs our support. And I would ask you very much to support Armenia too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karl Schwarzenberg. I thought this was a valuable contribution. Some of the critical remarks you have made, I believe, have been covered by the two amendments we've proposed, especially at the end, where we very clearly state that any kind of trio strategy would only be successful if there are no setbacks to democracy, reforms and the rule of law in these countries. And we do see with concern the latest developments, for instance, in Georgia or Moldova. Our next speaker is Ebba Busch Thor from KD from Sweden. There you go. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear EPP colleagues and friends. EU integration is a long and demanding process, and it should be. In fact, it must be. Because a close partnership with the EU is not a given right, it is a privilege that one has to earn. Our European partners in the East have made great progress in this regard. This is with the very regrettable exception of Belarus. A parliament without any representation from the opposition indeed indicates room for improvement. At the same time, other Eastern partners have to start showing that they are serious about fighting corruption, organized crime, and trafficking. Yet, that does not mean that we should shut down the door to further EU integration. Doing so would come at a very high cost. Across the Western Balkans, frustration with the delayed candidacy and accession processes has indeed opened the door for Russian expansion. In our eastern neighborhood, such expansions come in the shape of military aggression. Let us be frank. Vast areas of Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine are still occupied by Russia. Russia's meddling in Nagorno-Karabakh and brings to sustainable peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Crimea belongs to Ukraine. These are facts that Putin will never acknowledge. Thank you. For that very simple reason, we cannot turn our backs on our European friends in the East. Rather the opposite, we must bring them closer. So from our side, from KD Sweden, we would like to give our strongest support for this resolution. Thank you for the word.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bush-Tor, for your contribution. No further requests to speak, so we can now move on and vote. Who's in favor of this resolution with the 2 amendments which I read out? Who's against? Abstentions? And this has been adopted with the 2 amendments we presented. Our last draft ordinary resolution for today was tabled by the EPP presidency and deals with the ongoing crisis in Venezuela and our commitment to stand with the people of Venezuela and the democratically legitimate opposition to the socialist Maduro regime. Are there any requests for interventions? I see one. Mr. Leopoldo Lopez from Partido Popular, Spain.
Mr. Chairman, friends, Venezuela, a country that enjoyed peace and prosperity 20 years ago, has fallen into the destructive hands of the Castro communism, a new force called the 21st century socialism. Then the country had 28 million inhabitants. Now, almost 5 million have migrated in the last 3 years. And according to the OAM and the United Nations, it is expected that by the end of the next year, 1 out of every 3 Venezuelans will have migrated, leaving the country. The worst migration crisis the world has today. 30,000 citizens have been murdered by violence in the last year. Venezuelans, democratic Venezuelans, are grateful to the European Parliament, particularly to the EPP, for the present solidarity, the recognition of the legitimacy of the President Juan Guaidó, and the sanctions provided in the last actions. We must, once more, show our full support to the valorous fighters of freedom and democracy in that country by passing this resolution. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. No further requests to speak, so we can now vote. Who's in favor for this resolution? Who's against? Abstentions? This has been adopted. Now, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would like you to vote on the draft emergency resolutions that were discussed in the resolution committee this morning. We have changed some of the resolutions. We have decided to amend them, so I would like you not only to vote on the resolution but also on the amendments which were adopted this morning in the resolution committee. We start with our first resolution. It was tabled by the EPP Women. It deals with a, quote, female vision for a better Europe, unquote, and outlines our top priorities for the next Commission's 5-year term. Would somebody like to take the floor for the EPP Women? Doris Pack? Okay, you've already mentioned it in your speech, then we don't need to repeat this now. Any further requests to speak? That is not the case. Then I suggest that we immediately vote. Who's in favor of this emergency resolution number 1? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. The draft emergency resolution number 2 has been tabled by Partido Popular. It underlines our support as European People's Party for our European farmers who are rightly concerned about the tariffs imposed by the US administration. We all know the United States is a major market for our agricultural exports. The agricultural products from the EU bear more than 90% of the burden and are those with a high added value, as for example wine, olive oil and dairy products. I would like to ask Partido Popular, would somebody like to take the floor? Yes, that's the case. Juan Ignacio Zoido, please take the floor.
El propósito de esta resolución es mostrar un frente unido en la defensa de todos los agricultores y ganaderos europeos. Argumentamos reiteradamente que el Partido Popular Europeo es el partido de los agricultores y de los ganaderos y, en consecuencia, deberíamos hacer más visible la defensa de sus intereses en este Congreso. Los aranceles impuestos por la Administración de Estados Unidos después de la OMC no es una amenaza inminente, ya es una realidad. Las empresas de toda Europa están perdiendo contratos por valor de millones de euros y miles de puestos de trabajo están en riesgo. Desde la perspectiva española, esto también plantea un problema social muy preocupante para muchas zonas rurales, en especial de Andalucía y de Castilla, que dependen de los empleos agrícolas y de las exportaciones a los Estados Unidos. Sabemos que la situación es similar en muchas de las regiones de toda Europa. Nuestros eurodiputados y líderes del Partido Popular han participado en numerosas reuniones sobre el terreno con los sectores más afectados, con esos agricultores y sobre todo con los representantes también de la industria. El mensaje principal que nos han trasladado siempre ha sido el mismo: la eliminación de los aranceles, porque es esencial para evitar la ruina de una parte importante del sector agroalimentario de la Unión Europea. Es posible que también necesiten medidas de apoyo excepcionales, dadas las circunstancias difíciles por las que están atravesando, pero coinciden en que no quieren subsidios ni tampoco soluciones a corto plazo. Simplemente exigen seguridad jurídica y unas normas de juego que le permitan seguir exportando y seguir siendo competitivos. Por tanto, nos gustaría instar a la Comisión Europea a negociar con los Estados Unidos para encontrar un compromiso alternativo que conduzca al fin de los aranceles de la forma más rápida posible. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Zoido. Further requests to speak? That is not the case. Ladies and gentlemen, we have distributed one sheet of paper with all the amendments we adopted this noon today at the Resolution Committee meeting. In the case of resolution number 2, there are 3 amendments to delete in line 41, quote, of the deals achieved to eliminate the tariffs for the auto and steel industries. In line 41, to add after in the spirit, quote, of the July 2018 agreement. And in line 46, to delete, quote, that result from geopolitical decisions like the Russian ban or the US tariffs. So if you agree with these 3 amendments which were adopted unanimously in the Resolution Committee today, I would like to then have a vote on the whole resolution. Everyone seems to agree. Then, who's in favor of this resolution with the 3 amendments? Who's against? Abstentions? This has been carried. Our next resolution, emergency resolution draft, has been tabled by our hosts, the HDZ from Croatia, and it deals with the necessity to bring the European accession perspective for the Western Balkans back on the table. We have already heard a lot about this important issue during some of our speeches this afternoon. So without any further ado, I would like to ask HDZ, does somebody request to speak? That is not the case. We decided today at the resolution committee meeting to add in line 21 after the word Albania, quote, and expresses deep concern about the recurring phenomenon of people with criminal records, corruption and organized crime, and urges to overcoming the political crisis through all-inclusive dialogue and electoral reforms that pave the way for free and fair elections, unquote. And then in addition, in line 81, after the words the judiciary, to add, quote, as well as the protection of human rights, including the rights of minorities and property rights, unquote. So these are our 2 proposed amendments to this resolution. If you all agree, we can now vote. Who's in favor? Against? Abstentions? This has been adopted. Our fourth emergency resolution has also been tabled by the HDZ. It deals with the demographic challenge Europe currently faces. It underlines an analysis by Eurostat which highlights that over 25.5% of the rural population is at risk of poverty or social exclusion. I once again would like to ask HDZ, is somebody willing to take the floor? This is not the case. We have this noon, decided to amend the resolution with the following amendments. In line 36, after the word projects, to add cultural and linguistic. In line 84, after people, to add in the places where they live. In line 84, after people, then additionally to add 2 new bullet points. 11A demands that EU member states strengthen platforms for intergenerational dialogue in order to secure the best possible models of cooperation between younger and older populations and to develop a maximum of opportunities for lifelong learning to optimize the skills of workers across all age groups. And bullet point 11B calls upon the politically responsible EU institutions and national governments to invest in the rapidly growing silver economy to the benefit of all generations by creating economic growth, innovation and new jobs, unquote. Any comments from your side, dear delegates? That is not the case, then we can proceed and vote. Who's in favor of this resolution with the read out amendments? Who is against? Abstentions? This has been adopted. Our last draft emergency resolution, number 5, was tabled by our friends from Cyprus, from the Democratic Rally. It highlights Turkey's illegal actions in Cyprus and the Eastern Mediterranean. We condemn Turkey's launching of illegal drilling operations in the exclusive zone of the Republic of Cyprus. We denounce the provocative attempts by Turkey and the Turkish Cypriot leadership to bring Varosha under its own administration. I would like to give the floor to Chairman Avarov Neofito. Neofito, the floor is yours.
The Turkish illegal drillings in the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus and the Turkish attempts to bring the city of Varosha under their illegal administration, an action that violates the relevant UN Security Council resolutions on this matter. Finally, with this resolution, we ask you to support the efforts of President Nikos Anastasiadis for the resumption of the negotiations at the critical meeting that will take place in Berlin this November 25th. Thank you for your support.
Efyaristo Neofito, thanks for your important contribution. Colleagues, any further remarks from your side? That is not the case. Then let me inform you that in the Resolution Committee meeting this noon, we proposed one amendment to delete the lines 49 till 53 and to adopt the rest of the resolution as it stands. So if you're okay with this, then let me finally ask you once again to raise your hands. Who's in favor of this resolution? Who's against? Abstentions? And this has also been adopted. Dear EPP friends, I would like to thank you for your attention and great cooperation. Let me really thank not only our President, who chairs the Resolution Committee meeting together with me, but also Christian Kremer, Ronald Freudenstein, Ines Preinsack-Ward and Claudia Kaiwan for the great support. It was an easy job for me to handle this. Mr. President, we got it done in 25 minutes as promised, but I have just one question. I have one wish. All those delegates who were now present in the hall should be served food and drinks first tonight. Thank you very much.